Hello, and welcome to another splendid episode of Furries in the Media, the series that reviews videos and other media based on how the furry fandom is represented.
What you got for us today, Abergwine?
Well, Sam, today we're looking at a mini-documentary created by Seeker and posted to YouTube in 2015 with the title, Furries Aren't as Weird as You Think. The video was also included in an article with the same title posted on Seeker's website, but we're just interested in the video for today. Let's see if their mini-documentary really does support the claim that furries aren't as weird as you think.
How you appear really defines a lot how you act. And in a fursuit, the way I can perform, the way I can act wouldn't really work not in a fursuit. You can't just run around and act like a fool if you're not a giant dog, you know?
Alright, this looks pretty good so far. The film seems to be utilizing a technique that uses the subject's interview responses as the primary narration for the film. This seems promising that the intention behind this mini-documentary is to humanize the people of the furry fandom by putting them directly into the spotlight. And yet, they wonder why we still have trust issues. They could have used just about any other word like furry fandom, community, or even just world of furries.
What if they meant that word in the sense of it being an obsession?
Maybe. But it doesn't take an etymological scholar to know that that's not the meaning that comes to mind for the vast majority of people when this term is used. If they really meant to convey obsession, then they should have used the word obsession instead of confusing or misleading their audience. It wouldn't have been a perfect substitution, but it wouldn't have been as problematic as the term they ultimately did use. That all being said, we're not even 30 seconds into this video, Sam. Let's see how the rest of it plays out to see if these furries really are obsessed, and whether or not furries aren't as weird as you think.
In the 70s or 80s, furry meetups started happening at science fiction conventions, but it's definitely exploded since the internet. The internet is like the primary social forum for furries. The textbook definition is an animal with human characteristics.
I'm sure that they meant for the audience to infer that this textbook definition is meant to describe furries. It could also, more accurately, be the definition of anthropomorphism. It's definitely accurate for both terms, but the fact that it's unclear exactly what is being defined here feels a little off to me.
Why is that?
It seems like they tried to cram too much into this video, and this was just a casualty as a result of that crunch. I can't help but wonder, if they're willing to make such a sacrifice on something that is arguably foundational to the audience's understanding of the subject at hand, what else are they willing to sacrifice? It doesn't exactly inspire confidence in me.
Is Glitch's recounting of furry fandom history correct?
Yeah, I think the history seems to be correct as far as the broad strokes.
A lot of people assume that like every furry has a fursuit, but I would say that like not even half have fursuits.
Do less than half of all furries own a fursuit?
Well, that does seem to be true as of 2016. That was when the International Anthropomorphic Research Project published their past survey findings regarding fursuit ownership in the furry fandom. Their findings suggest that around 10 to 15% of furries own full fursuits, and about 25% of furries own a partial fursuit. Even though these findings are around 4 years old now, I doubt that number has since grown to encompass more than half of all furries.
To me, a fursona is some people will take a combination of whatever animals that they feel closest to, feel favored to, or just generally like, try and combine the best traits of that and the best traits of themselves into something new, something great. The best of both worlds created into one.
Fursonas, or furry personas, can be any species or combination of species in a sort of fantasy hybrid. As far as personality goes, some furries create elaborate backstories for their personas, while for others it's just them, but with fur. Some give their fursonas characteristics they may desire for themselves. For example, a furry who is quiet and shy may create an extroverted fursona because they wish to be a bit more extroverted in their daily life.
They skipped right over defining what a fursona is.
They sure did. Now, I don't think that every single piece of media that features furries needs to go through the same old expository slog of having to define each and every one of these terms. But if the purpose of a film is to introduce a new audience to the subject, then I think it's unwise to skip over these fundamental definitions.
I pretty much had to make my own family because my family was broken apart early on in life. So I made my own. And I found it easier through the fandom.
Yeah, I felt like when I found this place that I came home. That's kind of what it felt like, because it was just this big culture that was so loving and open.
For many, the furry community is about the friends made along the way. Like Glitch said earlier, many furries form friendships online, and furry conventions provide a place for online friends to meet in person.
When I meet someone who's not a furry, I definitely don't tell them that I am a furry.
I think Glitch's apprehension towards telling non-furries about being a furry is representative of the average furry stance on the matter. Many furries are very selective about who they open up to. Even ignoring the misconception that furry is only about sex, people outside of the community might still see furry as something that is childish, or is otherwise indicative of an unhealthy lifestyle.
I feel like there's a bad conception of us that kind of creates a wall between our culture and like mainstream culture. Hey, sex sells, you know? That's what people want to hear, so that's what they're going to hear.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like I do gotta hide this because there's a lot of stigma behind it. A lot of us will try and say, oh, we're not all like that. No, we're not this, we're not like that. No, not a lot of us are like that. But something we do gotta accept is that does exist there.
Okay, what's up with the muzzle? I don't know, but I don't think it would be right to assume that this particular fursuiter is into adult stuff based solely on the fact that they've got a muzzle on their fursuit. Many fursuiters will accessorize their suits with accessories that their real-world counterparts would use, like a husky wearing a dog collar.
Why is a feline using a canine muzzle?
When it comes to character design and accessorization, I've noticed that furries love to bend the rules. As an example, my fursona is a silver fox. Obviously, I've taken some liberties in how I've designed my fursona. When was the last time you saw a fox wearing glasses?
Good point. So why even show this suitor?
I don't think it was an attempt to undermine what Glitch and Viridian were saying or anything, but I could see how someone might interpret it that way. If anything, I think it serves to exemplify what Viridian was saying, that not all furries are into that stuff, but some are, and that's perfectly fine. I think the technical answer for why they did this is that it seems that they edited Viridian's response, and they showed some relevant B-roll footage to make the resulting film more seamless. This is as far as the film goes when it comes to addressing the misconception that furry is about sex, which is arguably the main reason why people would think furries are weird in the first place. While I wish there was a little more background on why the misconception exists, I definitely appreciate the well-rounded response from Viridian. I would love to see more media pieces promote this more nuanced viewpoint, rather than taking a black or white view of the fandom.
It is a lot of work to walk in a suit. It is. You need somebody to help you move around. She tells me when there's kids around, because I can't see anywhere down here. When I need water, she puts it in there somehow. She figures it out. She's got my back.
Wait, she can't see her own feet?
Probably not without looking directly down. Fursuits have a ton of blind spots. There's a blind spot underneath the muzzle, and peripheral vision is often limited. My own fursuit has these blind spots, and I've also noticed that there's just enough space between the eyes of the costume that I have trouble with depth perception when I try to focus on objects that are close to my face.
Is it really that hard to move in a fursuit?
It can be quite awkward depending on how the suit is made. As another example, my fursuit's feet are bulky enough that it's a bit of work for me to walk with them on. It can make my legs sore if I've worn them for a bit. They're also big enough that I have to be deliberate when I step through an interior door frame so that they don't hit the sides of the door. That, and I have to make sure my tail doesn't hit anything.
That does sound like a lot of work.
Yeah, a lot of fursuiters will have another person help them keep an eye out for potential problems. These people are called fursuit handlers. A fursuit handler can help the fursuiter to navigate through crowded areas, like conventions, and help them find a place where they can remove the costume head to cool down.
Why not just take it off wherever they are?
Aside from not wanting to reveal their identity, a lot of fursuiters are adamant about not breaking the magic. There's a reason why Mickey Mouse never takes off his head in front of a crowd of kids.
I was introduced to the furry community through my son, who's a furry. I, myself, am a husky, a white husky. This is my first convention. It's fantastic. It's wonderful, and the people, I can say I've never met a furry I don't love. Our family's very open. We talk, we listen, we laugh, we make fun of, we do all that stuff. That's what life is, to understand, and at least if you don't understand, then find out why you don't understand.
Ooh, I like that saying.
Yeah, me too. I really like that they show a mother and her son at the convention. It showcases the diversity of familial structures that furries can come from, and further goes to show that furries really can come from any background. That, and it's just nice seeing a parent who's supportive of their child's interest and willing to give it a go for themselves.
Sometimes when people go to these cons, they can just kind of escape their real world for a few days and just enjoy just that animalistic closeness, just that otherworldly nature, just another person, another identity, something else completely, just for a little while. And as long as those people remember that, yeah, they got to come back, then they're going to be fine.
I think this is the attitude that most furries have towards the escapism that the furry fandom has to offer.
You mean they don't want to live in furry land forever?
I don't believe so. Not to say that furry land doesn't sound appealing, cause I'm not gonna lie, I think it sounds awesome, but I think that most furries know that at the end of the day, they have to come back to reality. Let me put it another way. There is a phenomenon called post-convention depression. Some furries report that they feel depressed after the emotional high of a furry convention. I've never experienced it myself, but there are findings from the IARP that support its existence. I think if it were true that all furries live in escapist furry land all the time, post-con depression wouldn't be a thing because furries would never accept that they have to go back to reality. Now let's take a look at those review stats. Information accuracy is 89%, and the spirit is 60%, averaging out to 75%. And now time for my thoughts. This mini documentary from Seeker sets out to humanize the furries they interview, and they seem to do a pretty decent job of it. The method of allowing the furries' interview responses to serve as the primary narration for the video allows the audience to really hear what the furries have to say for themselves. The film shows furries from different backgrounds, what it's like wearing a fursuit, and yet it reassures the audience that furries are still people who are just as grounded in reality as they are. All of these things serve to humanize the furries by showing the viewer that they're not so different after all. With all of that said, there's still one minor thing I'd like to address.
That title card?
Not yet, Sam. I'm getting to that. There were places in the video where it felt like they were in the middle of explaining some concept that was relevant to understanding the furry fandom, but it was cut off, or not explained in proper detail. We're given a definition, an animal with human characteristics, but we don't know what term is being defined. There is no explanation of what a fursona is, and I feel like the sex misconception could have used more background explanation. Now, like I said earlier, I don't expect every single piece of media that features furries to have to go through the same expository slog. Maybe they didn't need to in this particular case. It may be that their audience is already aware of these terms and concepts so that they can hit the ground running. But I still think doing this runs the risk of failing to inform those audience members who haven't heard of furries. Don't get me wrong, I do appreciate that this film has its sights set a bit higher than being an introductory piece, but I feel that even these days, it's still unwise to assume that all or even most of a non-furry audience has even heard about furries. Sure, slowing down and adding a few more seconds of explanation might run the risk of a viewer getting bored and wandering away, but the ones that stick around will likely come away with a better understanding. They'll have a better chance of empathizing with the furries in the video, and maybe they'll realize that furries aren't as weird as they think. Okay, now onto the big one.
The title card?
Yes, Sam, the title card. So, what do you think? Given what all we've seen in the rest of the video, do you think they could have used the word obsession in place of the word they did use?
Gonna go with my gut. I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either. The footage in this video seems to have been primarily gathered from a furry convention, so of course you're going to see every furry decked out to the nines for the duration of that weekend. Granted, they still could have used the word obsession, and it would have been more accurate than the word they did use, but still somewhat problematic as it would imply compulsion when that's not necessarily the case.
They clearly had other options, though. Why did they do what they did?
I have some ideas.
I do too, actually.
Alright then, let's hash this out. Go!
They did it out of malice.
I don't think so. There were plenty of other opportunities for them to make furries look bad if they were trying, so I don't know if I buy that. My turn. It was a goof in the editing room.
Like it was a joke, but it got published by accident?
Yeah, I guess like that, but of course this is pure speculation, so take it with a grain of salt. If it was a goof, though, why not take down the video or write up an editor's note or something to fix the mistake?
Good point. My turn again. It was an honest mistake.
Nah. I have a really hard time believing that a film crew went to a furry convention to film and interview furries, then came back to the editing floor with the sincere belief that furry is just a kink.
What if they meant obsession?
Okay, I see what you mean. I could kind of see that as an honest mistake, but again, I feel like even that would be ruled out by spending time with furries and applying some common sense to the situation that furries wouldn't be too pleased with their community being dismissed as a kink. My turn again.
Alright, that was the last of my ideas.
Yeah, this is my last one too. It was a dishonest attempt to grab the audience's attention.
Maybe.
Again, this is all speculation, but the fact is, Seeker had been founded about 7 months before this video was published. What if the title card was an attempt to get some eyes on their videos in the hopes of eventually establishing an audience?
Sounds like we're back at malice again.
I mean, kinda. Maybe they didn't think there was any harm in doing this, and to an extent they're not wrong. This is not even close to the worst treatment the furry fandom has endured from the media. But if the intention was to get more eyes on the video as part of the end goal of establishing an audience, It seems pretty stupid to intentionally alienate a portion of that audience right out the gate. Regardless of the reason, the fact remains that no action has been taken by Seeker or anybody involved in the video's creation to address or correct this. No retraction, no editor's note, not even a comment on the video's YouTube page that addresses this. I think if they still wanted to build some credibility and by extension build up an audience, this would be a good place to start.
How could they improve the video, just in general?
Fix the title card, or at least acknowledge the mistake. It also wouldn't hurt to spend a few extra seconds establishing the proper context so that the audience can better understand the subject matter of the video. So Sam, now that we are at the end of our review, is it true that furries aren't as weird as you think?
I mean, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I'm totally convinced of that either. Would this video be enough to convince or leave a lasting impact on the average non-furry viewer? Let me put it this way. This video is already 5 years old, and I'd already forgotten about it before coming back to review it. Putting aside the obvious sin, this was a pretty average video when it came to portraying furries. They got footage from a furry convention, they let the furries speak for themselves, and they showed a nuanced viewpoint in regards to the adult content in the fandom. Overall, this was a pretty average, if forgettable, fluff piece about furries that had some good parts that were overshadowed by that title card. But you know what? I wouldn't mind seeing more run-of-the-mill fluff pieces, just with better title cards. Well, that's it for today's episode of Furries in the Media. Have fun, stay awesome, bye-bye!